Hello, my dear audience. Today we are in the sixth round of 22nd Karpov International Chess Tournament. The sixth round will start in 1 minute, maybe even just now, because I see that there are chess clock meanings in the boards, not the all boards, but they start to become. So I have enough time to tell you about the details of the tournament before our speaking about the games. So after 5 rounds, Amin Tabatabai has a strong leadership. He has 4 points from 5. 3 victories and 2 draws, and right now his gap over the second place is 1.5. It's really much, especially in this strong tournament, the strongest in Russia of 2025, as you know, because the average rating of participants in 2600s 48, if I am right. So right now we respect him very much. As for the other participants, the places are sharing from the second to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. From the second to the seventh. Satvanya Raunak, Malachov Vladimir, Sargsyan Shant, Nesterov Arseny, Matirosyan Haik, and Vallejo Pons Francisco has 2.5. And places from 8th to 10th are shared too by Artemiev Vladislav, Sergey Sanan, and Vahidov Shamsidin. So right now, as you can see, the competition is very hard for everyone because, a gap between second place and the 10th place, the last one in this tournament, the gap is only 1.5. It's like nothing, it's just a result of one game. So everybody has a chance to have prizes in this tournament. And I think this intrigue will keep until the last round, because as you heard a lot of times, all the participants are very strong in this tournament. So, as for pairs for today, first board, Sargsyan Shant plays black with Satvanya Raunak, who plays white. Second board, Sergey Sanan plays with Amin Tabatabai. The third one, Artemiev Vladislav plays with Vallejo Pons Francisco. Fourth board, Nesterov Arseny plays with Vahidov Shamsidin. And the fifth one, Matirosyan Haik plays with Malachov Vladimir. And today, our next 5 hours or 6 hours or even 7 hours, we will discuss the details from these games. So I hope it will be enjoy for you, useful for you, and interesting for you. That's my job as a commentator and your entertainer for today. Let's start from the first board. Satvanya Raunak, as I said before, plays with Shan Sargsyan. And this opening, called like Zuckertort opening, The main idea of White's first moves is delaying a d4 move. It needs for the dark bishop from b2. As you can see, not the whole number of participants in the table on time, so it's totally okay, because the accepted time too late in this tournament is 30 minutes, half of hour. So if you come to the board after the start of the round, I don't know, 15 minutes, it's totally okay for you. Of course, your initial time will be not 100 minutes, it will be 85 minutes. But, with these great time limits, it's not decisive. As for late, as I said before, so 30 minutes delay means forfeit. So in this game was c4, e6 and knight c3. Dark bishop from b2 will try to do something. If white wants to, they might, transposition with d4 with the typical closed openings, but of course they might keep this pawn on d2. Yesterday, or sorry, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, we saw it in other games. Yesterday was a day off, and lots of participants and commentators had a tour, so it was a process of sightseeing. It was very interesting, cultural, Hunties traditions, games, nature, and food. It was interesting for me. I hope for everybody is too. So, right now, as for c5, let's check the statistics of popularity to understand it better. So right now, black has a lot of options to continue the game. The most popular move right here is bishop e7, 29%, c5 is the second line, b6, bishop d6, c6, so like everything right here. Because white hadn't created problems for the opponent, it's very modest opening, without something risky and aggressive in the first moves. Of course, after the finish of development, something will start. But right now, it's time to come play in the opening. As for statistic of results, right now, fun fact, but white has a very good statistics in the masters database. That means, at least I means. So 36% of win by white, 42% by draws, and only 22% of winning black. So it means something. Usually in closed openings, the percent of winnings by white and by black is close to each other, but right here, no. So we will look at that, especially after c5. d4 is possible, and to be honest, 54% of masters prefer the here. d4, 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 knight c6, and that will be Tarrasch defense with this square of pawns in the center. So cd is possible, as we discussed before. If you have a square of pawns in the center, your first thought is taking to the center. a3 is more popular right here, so everything is possible for white. The evaluation, of course, is 0.0, our regular joke. As for other opportunities, sometimes in that situation, white prefers firstly capture on d5 and only after c takes d5, d4. Right now, this move is, you have to do that because d4 is a threat. Of course, one of your opportunity is making a check, and after that, d4. Second opportunity is, of course, d4 right now, but you should do this, preventing this move from the black. That's very big problem because black is gaining space and your knight on c3 is suffering. So in this particular game, c takes d5 was played and e takes d5, d4. So I have guessed all the variations. d4. Circuit opening, okay, we will see that. Right now, the white has the bigger percent of winnings right here, but we'll check it. As for the second board, Sugirov Sanan plays with Amin Tabatabai. As I said in the early beginning, Amin Tabatabai is the leader of tournament right now, and his gap from the second place is 1.5. So that means that even if he loses the game, he will be the leader. So this gap from the second place, of course, will be smaller. But right now, nothing can change the position of Amin Tabatabai. And right now in this game was played Ray Lopez, so as you can see, e4, e5, knight f3 and bishop b5. Knight f6 without a6 is a Berlin defense, so a6 of course is the most popular move right now, because usually this additional of this move is useful for the black, because they has one more idea with b5 and they lose nothing, but maybe in some kind of variations this bishop should stay on b5. For example, if you want to play knight d4 in some kind of variations or something like that, so that's the reason why 20% of masters prefer knight f6 right here. So there are 30,000 games of masters level and higher into my C, like C, black C. No, that's not that I wanted to say. You can put the point after the first part of my sentence to understand it clear. So there are 30,000 of game in Masters database right here, and that means that this opening is very popular for chess players. Wow, you would expect that. Okay, time to think for Sanan Sugirov. Not yesterday, the day before yesterday, and in previous games he spent a lot of times in the position after the opening. You know, this period between opening and middle game, it's really important thing, but he spent a really lot of times to analyze it. Maybe right now he decided to start calculate earlier. It's strange sometimes, but not for grandmasters, because they have a lot of games in the, everybody can see that. So their job is analyze what games your opponent prepared for this round. Maybe some variations, maybe you should choose some your previous variations, or in opposite, play it one more time with some improvements from your previous preparation, I mean. So it was a hard thought. I tried to say it clearly, but it was a fail. Okay, maybe I should use more simple sentence with, noun, verb and point in the end. But my nature is a Russian thing, and right now we're using very long and complicated constructions in our speech, so it's not so easy as you can imagine. As for the third board, Artemiev Vladislav plays with Vallejo Pons Francisco. Queen's Gambit declined, as accepted. Queen's Gambit accepted. So after the e6, it's Queen Gambit declined, of course, because nobody wants to take this pawn. And after d takes c4, it's Queen's Gambit accepted, so knight f3. And right now, Vallejo Pons Francisco is thinking for 4 minutes so far. Interesting, because as you would imagine that this position is known for him very well, because after the third move, that's very popular in any level of chess players. Knight f6 prefers like 70% of masters. So a6 is the second line with the idea of b5 and light flanket right here. As for c5, c5 prefers by 7% of masters here. So knight f6, is a common move, because your knight hasn't other opportunities to develop. Not e7, not h6. So if this move is essential for you, maybe it's the best way to do it firstly, because your other pieces can change their mind due to positional features. As for the knight, he hasn't other options. Let's look at the first board. Nestorov Arseniy plays with Vahidov Shamsidin right here. I want to start from the beginning, to understand it clearly. So d4, knight f6, d5, g3. Looks like a Catalan, to be honest, but the statistics says me that the name of this variation is Indian defense, anti-Nimzo Indian. Okay, in my mind, everything with fianchetto on g2 and c4 and d4 is a Catalan, and nothing can change it in my mind. Nothing. So, short castling, knight c3, and only after the move knight c3, the statistics says that right now it's a Catalan. Catalan. I don't know what the stress in this word, to be honest, but I hope you know this opening and you understand what about I'm saying. So, knight c3, knight bd7, and queen d3. Interesting position of queen. Usually queen stays on c2 in the similar variations, but right here this queen wants to protect the c4 pawn, so that's the best way to do it. Of course, a4 isn't working because of knight. b3, I'm not sure, maybe b3 is possible too? No, b3, why queen b3 is bad right here? Statistics doesn't like it, engine doesn't like it, what's the problem? So c6 and my guess is queen on b3 closed our pawn, so in some kind of variations this pawn wants to stay on b3 with the idea of dark fianchetto, because this long diagonal is promising for the bishop, so why not? Maybe that's the reason why queen stays on d3 better. b6, takes, and short castling. As for this exchange, if you are interested in this moment, usually in these variations you should take on the center only after the b6 move. Why? The explanation is so simple. Earlier, before the b6 move, your capture will help your opponent to develop his light bishop on g4, for example. So this pawn structure is good for him. Takes, c6. This pawn chain is blocking a bishop, and this bishop has a free diagonal. After the b6, the situation has changed, and right now this capture is better for us, because if our opponent keep his initial plan with e takes d5, his bishop of course has a free diagonal, but the point is this square will be very weak for him, because usually if you play b6, we think about bishop b7, protect the c6 square. But right now, if you stays here, your bishop will be lazy because of this pawn. So this option is not so good, and this option is not so good because of the square. As for taking by the knight, like in this particular game, this move has his own minuses, because usually we try to put the pawns in the center of the board, like here. Pawn on d5 will be better in the question of space in the center, because right now in some variations white will have the opportunity of a4, e4. e4 attacking the knight, as we know, minor pieces doesn't like to stay in the center of the board in the opening, because opponent's pieces will attack you, and you should waste of time, hiding from the threats. So that's the reason why this capture is good only after the b6 move. It was a short opening lecture, thank you, and right now it's time to continue. Short castling, bishop b7, and exchange. So, 1 second. As for this particular case, in the one hand, this bishop is blocked by his own pawn, and that means that our bishops are suffering. In the other hand, this e4 square is interesting, especially for the knight. So after that idea with knight f6, rook e8, knight e4, maybe in some variations c5, that position will be equal. White has a plans usually on c-file, because right now this pawn is a backward pawn, and after c5, white might take it by the pawn. So let's just imagine this pawn structure. For example, bishop f4 and c5. After the trade-off, Black has two options. The first one is a pawn structure with hanging pawns in the center. That means that your rook has targets in the whole life. And the second option is taken by the minor piece, by knight or by a bishop, but after that you will have an isolated pawn in the center of the board. So usually everything with pawn structure has a cons for the black, but it's totally okay, because right now the main thing in this position is pieces activity, so everything is good with that question. And the evaluation is 0-0, but maybe after the queen exchange or something like that, in the end game, this question become important. Become. Yeah, my first attempt was right. By the way, I really hate irregular verbs, because I forgotten it the whole time. In any case, right now in the game we have this position after e takes d5, and as for the opportunities of white is rook in the center, bishop on e3, preventing c5 or f4, or something else. Right now fianchetto is not actual because pawn on d4 is blocked everything, so knight e5 is not so possible because of f6. So right now e3 or f4, d1 or c1 or the both, and the game is continuing. Like right now it's 0.0 or plus 0.1, so to be honest, the same thing. As for the fifth board, let's have a look. Martus Haik plays white, Malachov Vladimir plays black, and as usual, the fifth board gives us the most aggressive position in the whole tournament. So let's look at the first moves, to make it clear for us. d4, d5, c4, c6, and this is Slav defense with a6. a6 is a Chebanenko variation. The main idea is, preventing a lot of things with knight b5 or queen, it's a bishop. Why I totally mixed up with queen and bishop? Good question, I have no answer for that. So, the main idea of a6 is preventing, it's the first thing. Meran ideas with b5 in the close future and c5 in the second. So the variation is equal, like everything in the Slav defense, because it's very reliable schemes. Not the day before yesterday, maybe in the fourth round or in the third round, we discussed it, and I explained to you the difference between c5 move in usual Slav defense and right here. If you want to, I may, explain to you that ideas one more time. What's the difference? Usually, when we try to play c5 in common variations like here after e6, it will be not so good because of pawn breaks in the queen side. For example, b6. So you should take it. To be honest, you should take it, and all of your pawn center is ruined. The before idea isn't working because of a5, and right now your problems are growing up. So a3 is prohibited because of capture, and this pawn is pinned. As for other kind of, bishop a3, for example, so that's a bad takes, knight a6, and all the opponent's pieces creates you a problem in the queen side, so you have no resources to hold it in the right position. As for the Chibanenko variations, with a6, your opponent shows that right now b6 idea is disappearing. So this idea doesn't exist, because usually in this common variation, after c5, b6, it will be, of course, a takes b6. And this semi-open file for rook is useful. This pawn came close to the center, preparing c5, so everything is good with black structure. But in the Chibanenko's variations, with a6, after c5 your move isn't working, because after the capture you should take it by your queen, and it's not so dangerous for white. White has opportunities with knight a4, knight c5. This pawn is a backward pawn right now. Your queen stays on c2, attacking this pawn, so the whole pawn structure is worse for the black, comparing with our previous variation with a takes b6. So that's the reason why usually nobody uses this move right here. In this particular game, knight bd7 was played, bishop f4, and bishop returns. So that's the theory. g3 to fianchettos, short castling, and after that trade-off, the computer says that the evaluation is half of a pawn in white's favor. So I really don't like this pawn structure, especially this backward pawn. Because of course you want to play c5, but it's not so easy. Of course, knight b6 help you, because this typical idea with blockade on c5 isn't working. After the knight a4 it will be trade-off here, but it's not means that but this doesn't means that I don't know how I can finish the sentence with correct grammar in English language. It doesn't mean that you have no something in the position with advantage. Whatever, I mixed up it one more time. In any case, this pawn structure is weak even in this moment, maybe not so weak like in our previous analysis, but enough to have advantage. So knight e5 is predictable, because this pawn is a weakness and it's logical thing to attack it. Bishop f5 is a sacrifice. No. So e4 looks like aggressive thing, but it's interfering, and after this trade-off we create an isolated pawn for us, but computer totally recommends that idea, so everything is good for white. Takes. Maybe it was the first moment when Vladimir Malakhov starts to, analyze this game in the board. Because, as you know, the time by default is 100 minutes, and right now he has 102 minutes in his clock. So that means that he just make his home preparation in the board so far, but after e4 so he needed a time to analyze it one more time or check something, who knows. So in any case, right now it was 2 minutes spent, and knight takes on c6. After that, knight takes on e4, protecting this knight. Knight is pinned, and the whole situation looks like very dangerous, but computer says that everything is okay. I have a lot of questions right now. Firstly, white has a extra pawn, and why? Let's start from calculating something. For example, I'm trying to answer my own questions in process, not using an engine. So my first question was about this capture. This knight is pinned, but I think I know the answer. After this capture on f5, it will be doubled pawns here, and it's not so good for black because their king become bare. Let's check it with the engine. So maybe my next idea after the bishop d4 is rook d1 seems interesting, but e5 is a good opportunity for the black. I'm not sure. Computer doesn't suggest the bishop takes d4 move. That means that move is bad. But why? Why? What's happening after that? So takes here, double the opponent's pawn. Of course. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So my previous thought was about queen f5. Of course, it's prohibited because of extra piece in d4. But after g takes f5, very interesting move who gives the white an advantage. Of course, it's a very simple tactical shot, but the aesthetic is for me. Queen takes on f6, of course. So this queen is hanging, and you should take me back or what else. And after that, knight takes on e7, and we came to the endgame with 2 extra pawns for white. Interesting, interesting. As for this pawn, it will be a scare, so nothing good for the black. Let's return to the initial position. Right now, the top engine move for black is e6, and they did it in the game, so takes. Right now, white has an extra pawn on d4, but if we believe the computer, the engine says that nothing interesting right here, so the evaluation is plus 0.3 in the perfect variations, maybe less. So there is no advantage in white's favor. Let's continue the variation. For example, I just want to try, to protect my central pawn after the bishop e3. Why not? Computer said that right now black has an initiative. After knight d5, the idea of f4, everything is hanging. Maybe knight b4 is the second threat because of that pin, so you should protect it somehow. And rook a7 with the idea of double pawns. Really? Why rook a7? What's the difference? For example, if I want to do that, here is bishop a5. That's the answer. So, rook a7. For example, I try to prevent it. Bishop h6. And the whole position looks like better for the black. After f4 it will be the fork, or what? Why not? Discovered attack. So right now, knight should stay here, protect this square from the ideas with hanging rook on c8. That's the point. Okay, I believe. That's the time I believe. Got it. After the taking here, black has a very good plans concerning with this pin on c-file. So you should play, initiatively, or your opponent will do that with knight d5, these double rooks, this diagonal for the bishop in some kind of variations. So, it's not so easy, and black has enough compensation in this imbalanced position with the extra pawn, so the equality, honestly speaking. Okay, perfect. What's happening in the first board? Let's check it. It was a circuit opening, and yep, in this case, after the d4 that white decided to do in the game, so position is so typical, at least speaking about pawn structure. Right now, black has a space advantage because right now both their bishops has free diagonals in the center, but this bishop is blocked by his own pawn. In the other side, of course, this trade-off creates potentially an isolated pawn in the center, so that's the reason why it's equality, and everybody has an obvious plans. So as for plan for black, their features in the play in the middle game. So the main task is keeping a lot of number of pieces, using the outpost on e4, attempts to finish their development quickly because they has more space, and the early attack is usual thing for that type of positions. As for the white, maybe fianchetto bishop on b2, modest development, and plans with capture here in the closest future, with attacking the isolated pawn. But in any case, the situation is equal, so nothing special right here. Knight c6, bishop goes to b5. After this trade-off, the isolated pawn stays in the board, so bishop d6. This bishop have more freedom. This bishop has a really potential target in the endgame, so this long diagonal will be possible after b3. But white needs more time to finish the development, and it's the typical thing. Knight returns to f3, avoiding any exchanges here. Why? Why we want to return? No. Yes. Just want to check. I feel that something very dangerous will be after the b3. No? Nothing with, there is a typical sacrifice near the king called Greek gift, but right now it's not working because of a knight. But I expected that, or something like that. Maybe a bishop h2. Computer says nothing. Computer says nothing because this typical idea with queen h2 after the knight f3 isn't working. And I expected something with intermezzo, with capture on d4, but looks like computer doesn't agree with me. So b3 is a possible move with preparing of the dark fianchetto in this side. So nothing specific here. But there is some reason why 64% of masters prefers knight f3, and in this game Raunak Sathwani, the rating leader of this tournament, prefers the same move. Maybe it's a prophylaxis, protecting this h2 pawn the second time in any case, because chess is dangerous thing. Maybe we're really avoiding the opportunities of exchanges here, and we are discovering the attack on the d5 pawn. So right now it's a problem for the black. They should think about that and looking for good moves to protect. Bishop e6 was played in this game, b3, preparing an fianchetto. This bishop is brilliant because he has a long diagonal without borders, and the most important thing, this bishop is protected d4 square from the pushment, because it's the first rule of playing against the Isolani. You should control the square, what's the opposite word of behind? How I can forget this type of word? Sorry, I need to check, because sometimes it's hard to say what you want to say. Yep, one more attempt. No? Yes. So the first rule is fighting with isolated pawn, or fighting with isolated pawn is control on the square in front of the isolani, So that's the reason why this bishop on b2 is so useful for you, because your minor pieces firstly and your major pieces secondly should to control this square. Short castling, queen b2, knight goes to e5 and bishop returns, because right now this diagonal is totally useless for this bishop. This is empty squares, everybody goes away from this, so bishop, finds the best job for him. Right now, of course, bishop wants to stay on f3 because the isolated pawn is the main point in this particular position, and bishop on f3 is usually useful. Firstly, this bishop prevents a knight g4 in any variations with attacking h2 square. Secondly, this bishop is aiming at the isolani. So right now, after the bishop e5, of course, there is an equality in the board, but I would play white. To be honest, maybe because I like strategical plans with attacking a weak pawn for, decades of moves. As for the engine responds that the evaluation is plus 0.3. So nothing special, but as for human, it's easier to play against this pawn. Potentially queen d2, rook d1, rook c1, maybe g3, creating a pawn chain in the way of black bishop. So everything is under control, and this position is very calm and reliable for everyone, to be honest. Because if black keeps the queen, there is no dangerous threats on this pawn. Usually queens secure the aggressive or something like aggressive game, and so the isolani pawn not the most important thing in the middle game with the queens. But after the queen's trade, if something like that happens, the position will better for white. I think everything that I told you, it's only my subjective opinion, so. As for the second board, Sugirov Sanan plays white and Amin Tabatabai plays black. As I said before, Amin Tabatabai, the leader of the tournament right now. So what's happening here? It's interesting. So it was Raya Lopez, it was a6, it was trade-off on the c6 square, and c3, preparing the d4 opportunity. It's easy to realize that right now white has a development advantage. They made short castling moves ago, and they put their rook on e-file in time. So right now their main goal is open files in the center, to start an attack to the uncastled king in the e8. That's the point why the engine recommends to black finish the development quickly. So bishop e7 in any case, and short castling after that. As for d4 right now, I'm not sure about this move, because after these exchanges, queen d4 looks like strange because of ruined pawn structure near the king. As for e5 opportunity, it's look interesting for me, because our goal is creating an attack. But technology thing says us that there is nothing dangerous for black. because they will have an extra pawn after the d takes e5, rook takes e5, and bishop e7. So this pawn is protected, this pin is good for black, and the short castling will be next move, so nothing. Really, this is an exception of rules. Usually, if we manage to open a file, for our major pieces, to attack an opponent's king, usually it gives us something, but not in this particular case. That's the reason why white should prepare the d4 move by the next moves. Maybe h3, avoiding a pin and force our opponent to take here. Maybe something else connected with bishop e3, or even knight bd2 and knight somewhere else. So after h3, for example, this bishop should take on f3. Or not. Maybe not. Right now the engine changed his own mind and answered that bishop h5 is possible. d4. I want to check, after this he takes d4. Have I got the opportunity with g4? Yep, but it's risky. Let's continue. I'm not really nervous about the capture, because it's over the opportunities of black. Don't forget, the king stays on the e8, so this idea with opening an e-file to have an extra pawn, I'm not sure, and computer agrees with me. He said that white has an adjective, has an advantage in more than the whole pawn after the queen c2. Looks strange, because that's a discovered attack potentially, but the point is the threat is dangerous for the black. After knight c5 it will be queen c3, and this is two pins. Knight cannot go away because of queen c6. I want to show you. Knight cannot go away because of this double attack from this square, and pawn is pinned, so everything is ruined in the center, and the best way for black is sacrifice a knight. So nothing good. As for other opportunities, this threat is so hard. After queen d7, protecting this square, it will be a predictable continuation with rook takes e4. d5 isn't working, so nothing for black. That's the reason why knight takes e4 is not dangerous. But the point is, computer says that black has enough options to continue the game. h5, counter threat. g5, knight d7 and protecting the whole center. Or d5, queen... I confused all the names of the pieces one more time. So my arrows is clearer than my words. Look at the arrows. It will be safer. Knight d7 right now is enough to keep the whole center, because that's protected. Bishop e7 and short castling is ready, so everything is under control for the black. And right now this position in the board, so Sanan Sugirov is thinking what to do next. And right now he spends 15 minutes so far, so long time. In the last day before the day off, he has a great stress in that rook endgame, if you remember. So he spent a lot of time in the period between opening and in the middle game, and he hasn't enough time near the end game, or he was so tired to make this great mistake. So it was really a blunder, a game decisive move. After that he lost this game, and it was a really stressful situation for him because it was a totally equality draw, without something, but a blunder. Things happens, especially after the first part of the tournament. You would imagine that this tournament is very energy spending for the all participants, because the time control is great, 100 minutes by default, and 50 minutes after the 40 moves, and 30 seconds by increment after every move. So the game unfolds for 5, 6, 7 hours, and that's the usual thing. Of course, brain is tired, close to the finish of the tournament. And my prediction that in the next rounds it will be blunders in the most of the games, and everybody is ready for these things because human brain is limited. We are human beings, all of us, and it's typical thing for participants, for their trainers, for the commentators, for the arbiters, for the old chess players who regularly take part in the great competitions. So, in any case, right now, Sugirev Sanan is thinking, and I suppose to go next. The third board, Artemy Vladislav plays with Vallejo Pons Francisco here, and our last analyze was after the maybe here. So in any case, typical thing. So right now this pawn constructor means that black has an option to capture that and create an isolated pawn in the center for the white. It's not so dangerous because, as you know, isolated pawn doesn't mean a weakness. It's a special pawn with pros and cons. Pros is the advantage of the space. For example, after this trade-off, this bishop, of course, is better than that bishop. Because freedom, jail. I don't know what's the opposite of freedom, but this pawn chain is obviously blocked the bishop. As for the knight has a great outpost on e5. This knight haven't this opportunity, and there is more space for the rook. For example, when your opponents will make short castling, your rook has an opportunity to use the third rank to, attack him. Cons, there are cons too, of course. Minuses, that's potentially weakness in the endgame. That's weak square in front of the Isolani, and major pieces endgame is problematic for the white. Yep. So a6, black delays this capture in the center because after c takes d4, it takes d4. This bishop will unleash, so that's not a good thing for the black, of course. a6 is a preparation of b5 and bishop b7, light, dark and light, fianchetto, yep, goes away. And right now we have got the same situation than I told before. An isolated pawn on d4. Right now is typical plan for the black is b5, bishop b7, maybe knight b4 to control this square better. That's a typical maneuver for the knight and the queen side, knight b4 and knight d5, so nothing special here. As for this pawn, it's like a beginner's chess player trap. You know, of course, this capture is prohibited because of discovered attack in the end of the variation. So, right now you know more. Joke. Bishop e7 and rook e1 was played right now. Artemiev Vladislav has 1 hour and 4 minutes, so he is spending his time, but less than in previous games. Maybe that's a good decision because his last game was lost because of time trouble. He spent a lot of time in the opening and in the first part of middle game in the 5th round, and after that the equal end game was lost because of time trouble. So of course, I have no right, you know, to give an advances to grandmasters. It will be strange, but I think that that's a good change in his time spending. Okay. As for the 4th board, Nestor Farseni plays with Wahidov Shamsidin. As we discussed before, after the b6, it's a good idea to take here, and that's the main line of theory. You know, 100% of masters in this position decided to take in the center. So, right now, white has more pawns in the central squares, so e4 is possible, but maybe not right now. I have a question, why? Maybe I would play e4. Oh, that's a blunder. That's a blunder because of tactical opportunity for black. You know, after e4, our queen is hanging, and black has a chance to exploit it after the trade-off on c3 and calculate if he wants. If you want to, knight c5, yep, it's a double attack. And this pin is secure, this knight on c5, so after queen c2 or something like that, this pawn is lost. Let's return. That's the reason why this trade-off was. Yep, we saw it in our last analysis. Bishop goes to f4, attacking the backward pawn on the c file, rook e8, and rooks to c and d file. Looks like, you know, my previous prediction was happen in the game totally 100%, because that's what I said before. Queen on d3, bishop on f4, rooks in the center. Of course, it's obvious plan with control of the whole center, but really I like to think that it was, you know, magic influence. In any case, this position maybe is better for the white because their pieces has a target on c7, sorry. After the c5, as I said before, the pawn structure will change, but there are weaknesses in the center in any case. After b takes c5, it will be hanging pawns right here, and white has a lot of opportunities to use it. After knight e5, for example, this bishop is discovered, this pawn is hanging. After the d4, bishop is hanging. For example, the attempt of counter threat takes. Bishop is hanging, takes, and everything is protected in this particular case. So knight has an option to go away. Queen takes e7 is prohibited because of, I think, my prediction is knight b6 with a double attack on the rook and f7 pawn. Am I right? I am right. Perfect, perfect. So let's return and look at the position one more time. Of course, after the bishop takes c5, it will be an Isolani pawn in the center, so not so good. Maybe it's possible to continue. And I have only one question. Why right now the top engine move is b4? What the goal of this thing? Ah, oh, so interesting. So this rook wants to go to c7. And right now it's like a pin, so we are attacking the black bishop by a pawn, like a pinned piece. After the bishop takes b4, it will be rook c7. This bishop is hanging. These moves are prohibited, so black should looking for chances to protect it. And takes. Oh, what's a sacrifice here on b7? Knight goes to e5, and computer says that there are a lot of threats in the same time. Knight c6 is the first one, bishop d5 is the second one, maybe something else. But in any case, the number of threats is enough to have a big advantage. So the evaluation here is more than a whole pawn in white's favor. It means something. That's the reason why white's position is better, as computer says. Right now, instead of c5, knight e6 was played, and maybe it's better for the black. Yep. This bishop is dangerous for black. He is aiming at the backward pawn, but after e3, the whole pawn structure is better for the white because of outposts on e5 firstly and e-file for the rook secondly. Okay. So, we will continue our analysis, but only after the short break. Every hour we take a break for 10 minutes. It's our schedule, so let's stick to that. See you in 10 minutes. Let's continue our stream. If you have just joined us, I want to remind you that we are in the sixth round of 22nd Karpov International Chess Tournament. And we have stopped in the fifth board, so let's have a look. Ike Martirosyan plays white, Vladimir Malakhov plays black, and it looks like something interesting. Our first analysis was here. Knight takes on c6 with an opportunity of desperado, and white had an extra pawn. We discussed it here. We saw that e6 was the top engine move. We checked the variation with bishop takes d4, and we realized that after bishop takes f5, black would have a hard position. So, after the exchange of queen, this bishop is hanging in the center. After the g takes f5, it will be a great opportunity for white, connected with queen takes f5, and the next double attack from the e7. So that's the reason why right here in this situation the e6 is the top engine move. So exchange in any case, pawn on d4 is hanging, and right now there are no chances to protect it. We analyzed the opportunity with queen e3, so knight goes to d5. This pin may be exploited with rook a7 and rook c7. You know, this doubled pawn is very dangerous for the white, so maybe that's the reason why b4 was played here. Looks like the attempt of, create a passed pawn and protect this knight. For example, after knight a7, there is an opportunity to play a4 and b5. Computer says that's working. Right now, the first game was finished. The first board in the game between Raunak Sathwani and Shan Sargsyan, that was the draw by agreement. So knight e2, exchange here, and right now we have an equivalent game. Yep. In my mind, it's nicer to play against Isolani, at least in the end game. But right now, of course, it's impossible to capitalize it if you play in top-level Grandmasters tournament. So, after the king g7, it was a draw in this game, the first draw in our sixth round. And right now, 4 boards left. Interesting. As for evaluation in the rest of the games, there are equalities everywhere. So, let's continue our process of analyzing the openings and middle games. As for the second board, Sanan Sergirov plays white, Tabatabai plays black. And right now, it's typical thing for the Rui Lopez is using f5 square. Usually, white is trying to put their knight on the f5, and black is trying to put their knight on the f4. And right now, the luck on the white side. But computer doesn't agree with me at all. He answered that right now the good decision for black is playing knight h5, and after this discovered attack, knight f5 is white has to do it, so necessarily takes, and the situation is equal, maybe even. in black's favor, because right now black has a pair of bishop advantage. At least computer said that the evaluation is minus 0.2. As for me, it's unclear, because white has a more space in the queen side and in the center of the board maybe. But right now computer suggests to play a4 and rook b8, trying to use this semi-open file to attack the backward pawn on b2. Looks logical. And that's the reason why right now knight h5 is the best move. You know, make some exchange in the queen side to make the attack weaker, and after that start the game in the queen side. But I think the draw is okay for black, because the gap between the first and the second place right now in the rank is 1.5, so it's a great number. We'll look. At the third board, Artemiev Vladislav plays white, Francisco Vallejo Pons plays black. So it's another game, you know, with Isolani and against Isolani. b5 is preparation of light fianchetto, of course, and there is new idea with b4. In some variations, when you need to kick this knight off from the c3, for example, if you want to play knight d5. Computer recommends to white right now make a trade-off in the f6, and after that the e4 square is free for the knight, for example, but better for the bishop. So right now this pawn is hanging, black is attacking it 3 times, so bishop e4 seems better. That's a pin, bishop b7 is the only move, and d5. That's the purpose of previous moves. In the one hand, that's strange to open a line in the center when your opponent has an advantage of bishop pair. In the other hand, after this trade-off, knight on d5 will be gorgeous, so he's not the worse than any bishop. After bishop takes b2, what it will be? Bishop f6, a4, and there is no ways to keep this pawn. b4, knight b4, and the amount of and the number of pieces is equal. What about queen a5? Queen a5 is prohibited because of ruining all the pawn structure near the king, of course. So the pawn is 100% taken back after the next move, so that's the reason why this position is equal. Okay, you know, if you learn chess right now, you may find a new idea for your collection. So if you have an Isolani pawn, interesting variations. There are interesting variations connected with trade-offs. Trade-off the opponent knight who block you, and after that prepare your movement of the Isolani. So in some games we do it to open files and diagonals and ranks in the center to our attacking pieces, but in this particular case we want to do it you know, to get rid of the weakness, and after that it will be the equal position. As for other opportunities, the second line that computer recommends us is a4. What will be after b4? Just want to check. Knight e4. Why not? Why not? I forget to tell you, maybe, knight e4 was in this particular situation, so why not? I forget to tell you about the pawn in the center, so maybe it was your question why this pawn isn't hanging, because of the discovered attack in the end of variation, so typical thing. Knight e4 was played maybe, if it will be possible, this knight wants to stay on c5 with protection of rook, because really, when you have isolani in the game, it should be exploited. So, outpost for knight in the center is a squares when pawn is a squares where a pawn protects them. So knight e4. Black has a lot of options right here. The evaluation is 0.0, so there is no something dangerous for them. They have a lot of things. Interesting fact that after knight e4, of course, we have an option to take here, but we may ignore that. After the bishop e4, the threat of white is not less dangerous than opponents. So that's a exchange, just exchange. Takes, rook a7, for example, to use the 7th line on c7 or d7 potentially. Knight takes here, queen takes here. Maybe d5 in the end, you know, getting rid of the isolani. Maybe. The evaluation is similar in the whole these lines. As for other ideas for black, so bishop b7 is working here, knight c5, and after the exchange, this isolani disappeared, so right now c5 pawn is potentially passed pawn in the endgame after the rook c1, and some exchange of the minor pieces, so this pawn may be strong. But the evaluation is 0.0 in any case, so I may tell that the draw is a possible result in this game, because the choice of the opening tells us that there is no risky, and you know what I wanted to say. Good final thing for every sentence, you know, because even if you don't know what I wanted to say, you have no way to tell me that. So, fourth board. Nesterov Arseny plays with Wahidov Shamsidin. After the knight e6, computer recommended us to play e3, because it's more useful to take on e4 by the e-pawn, because you open a e-file, and it may be possible, it may be useful for your rook and knight on e5. As for the knight e5 move, the engine says that it's a missed opportunity of open an e-file. So right now the evaluation gets smaller in white's favor, like 0.0 or even minus 0.1. Of course, it's a sarcasm, because these numbers mean nothing for us. It's just a meaning of equality, nothing more. But in any case, knight e5, it's a very human move, because he wants to stay on c6. As I said before, the next draw? Yep, looks like the next draw. You may see in your cameras from the tournament hall that Ike Martirosyan and Vladimir Malakhov changed the papers with signs of the game. That means they made a 3 times repetition here, if am I right. So, after the trade-off and before, that was a preparation to a4 and b5, and knight goes to d5, a4, queen b7. So that's a threat, and right now b5 is impossible. Is not a possible, is prohibited because of the target of queen, of course. So queen goes to c4, preparing this move. Knight goes to b6 with a double attack. So they only move and return. Very logical 3 times repetition. Why not? Yep, right now this round goes very quick. And that moment, because after 1 hour and 26 minutes, free game of 5 left. 2 games have finished. Okay. Maybe, opponents want to keep more energy before the last decisive rounds. As you know, there are 9 rounds in this tournament, so the last rounds, I mean 8s and 9s, will be decisive. So maybe it's a way, to keep the energy. I don't know why, but the positions were really equal, so no questions. Okay, 3 boards left, and we discussed it in circle, Sometimes I will try to analyze it with more number of detail, because really we'll have enough time to investigate every small move. Okay, we have stopped here. I told you about the c6 square in front of the backward pawn. So in previous moves it was the main problem of black, because their bishop wanted to go, for example, on g4 in the situation like here, but he couldn't, because this pawn is backward. This square in front of backward pawn is weakness, so bishop should stay here and protect it. Right now in this position, black decided to take by the knight, but after some move it was the capture by the pawn, so we have right now the same pawn structure. And it's totally predictable for white trying to use it. As for black, computer recommend them, not to worry. Just continue the development or improve the pieces. For example, bishop d6. Right now this move is prohibited because bishop on f4 is hanging. Maybe that's one of the reasons why computer recommends white play a3. By the way, speaking about e3, let's return. Our bishop cannot be trapped in the end of the variation. For example, just want to check. Knight e6 and e3 is interesting, but right now our bishop has not a way to return. And what will be after the g5? Bishop e5. Okay, good. What will be after f6? The only one move for white, it's bishop h3 with counter threat. So during the game, I think it's hard to decide to this variation, because it's really unclear what we have after this move. But obviously thinking, it's clear that we lose. We lose the squares for our bishop to return, and we lose calm in our mind, because in every move we should check whether our bishop get trapped here. So knight e5 is explainable for human beings. Computer wants to play e3, but as for human beings, It's a horror thing. Every move checking g5 f6 idea. So usually we are trying to create a luft in opposite to our minor every pieces. Okay. Bishop f6 was played, and right now this move is prohibited again because our pawn in d4 is weakness. Not weakness, but right now this knight looks like pinned knight. He interfered the diagonal from the opponent's bishop, and maybe that's not so promising for us because queen have a chance just going away on d7 or something like that, so there is no something special here. As for next move, queen d2, computer recommends. I don't know why, maybe protecting our bishop. Maybe something else. As for e3, too late. Because of exchange here and g5. And right now it's so harder, looking for a counter threats. So. A simple question. What if we want to double our rooks on c-file like in previous times? No, late. So late because of c5. What's next? Takes. Knight takes on c5, and this knight on e5 is hanging. So these moves connected with protecting the knights aren't working because of the pin and more attackers than defenders. Maybe that's the reason why computer doesn't like the knight e5 move, because after c5 this knight will be unprotected. Okay, so more than half of a time was spent by white. 43 minutes left. Strange, because black has 1 hour and 18 minutes after the first hour point 5. Really, in every board right now in the tournament, one of the opponents has more amount of time. Let's look here. Amin Tabatabai has 1 hour and 40 and 34 minutes. His opponent 27 minutes. Right here, Francisco Vallejo Pons has 1 hour and 12 minutes. His opponent has 46 minutes. And right here, Shamsuddin Wahidov has 1 hour and 18 minutes. His opponent 42 minutes. So, like, time in balanced situation in every game. Looks like equality in every game so far. For example, right here it was our prediction. Yeah, I'm right. After the attempts of using the f5 square by the knights, so knight h5 in this situation, it was top engine move because the diagonal ideas were discovered right now, and knight is hanging. So after the first sequence of moves, we've got an equal situation because white had a space advantage, black has a pair of bishop advantage. After the bishop f6, for example, potentially it may be idea using b file for the rook or preparing a d5 pawn break, maybe not. So these bishops are good. Knight takes g3, and right now it's time to make a choice. Who will take on g3? As for the pawn, it's interesting, because we open a f file in this variation for the major pieces, and rook from f1 may help the whole camp to protect this knight in the interesting square. Yep, it was in the game, really in the same second when I explain it. So, f takes g3, and right now semi-open file, why not? Of course, b2 pawn, like f7 pawn, so maybe a rook will stay on f2 and, keep the b2 backward pawn. Interesting ideas. As for pawn offensive, it could be too, because pawn from g3 protect the h4 square. So the both variations with offensive is possible here. Computer says that black should capture here to exchange this strong piece on f5. Maybe e takes f5 and a4. Black plays on the queen side, white potentially plays on the king side. So everybody wants to play in the flank when he has an offensive. Predictable. Very, very predictable. So f takes g3. These double pawns are good. As you know, doubled pawns is not a weakness. It's just a feature of the pawn structure. In some particular cases, it may be weakness. Usually, when opponents has a chances to attack it. In some positions, the double pawns can be neutral, nothing useful, nothing dangerous. Right here in this situation, these doubled pawns is better for white, because these pawns are controlling the squares from different colors. It adds a harmony in the whole position, and semi-opened file f is useful for the major pieces of white. As for the third board, Artemiev Vladislav plays with Francisco Vallejo pawns, and Francisco Vallejo pawns is thinking for last 20 minutes so far. After the knight e4, it's time to calculate everything and check it double or triple. Really, this time control let everybody to check the variations a lot of times. It's useful, but closer to the end of the game, everybody's tired because the game is so long for participants. So, as I said a lot of times, human brain is limited. So after 5 or 6 hours, lags come. In any case, different opportunities in this situation we discussed before. The first one is trade-off here, and maybe it's more interesting for white is taking not on e7 but on e4 with a counter threat. In any case, it's a 0.0 because at the end of the situation it will be an isolani with equal number of pieces. Of course, white can get rid of the isolani, but after that the pawn structure will be totally symmetrical, so nobody has a real chances to have an advantage. As for the other idea with ignoring this knight on e4, it's more dangerous, but computer says not. c5 square for knight is interesting, but after the trade-off, I don't know. Computer says 0.0 as usual, but as human being, I want to say that in the end game this pawn might become very dangerous for black, of course, because free pawns, free squares before the promoting, and potentially it will be a protected passed pawn. So my prediction was right. Knight knight took on the e4. Was it right? Take, took, taken. Yep. I said that I hate the irregular verbs, but in my childhood, in school, I learned it. Take, took, taken. So right now it's useful knowledge for me, because I can say that knight took on the e4. You never know when your knowledge will be useful for you, so lessons are good, whatever. Good means good. Okay. Right now, two options for the white, to continue this game without losing something. The first one is more easy, takes here, taken by the knight, because square in front of the isoline is important. Bishop e4, for example, and rook a7. Rook wants to go here, bishop wants to go here, knight wants to go in the front of the isoline. As for white, the knight wants to go to the outpost, rook to the c1, and what else? Queen on d3 to create a battery. So, this atypical pawn structure with isolani. So, isolani positions with isolani are a significant part of the strategic plans with imbalanced pawn structures, so nothing new for everyone. But you should never underestimate problems with this pawn, because right now it doesn't look like a problem, but in the engine it's potentially a weakness. So white should keep the queen in the board, avoiding trade-offs, especially major pieces, and continue the attack. By the way, minor piece endgame is okay for the white, because for minor pieces it's not a difference. For minor pieces the difference when I try to create the right sentence with correct grammar, I forget the whole purpose of my sentence. Typical problem. As for the second board that I wanted to say, right now Sugirov Sanan has only 26 minutes after the 16 moves. So, looks dangerous, because he had blunders in this tournament. That means that, he is already tired. So maybe that's not a good way, to spend a lot of time in the early beginning of the game, because there are 24 moves before the next control, and right now it's dangerous solution for him. Bishop took on f5, so right now the situation is equal. Okay, I just realized that he has only 26 minutes, so that was the reason when I wanted to say it to you. Okay, let's go back. Right now we discussed everything. with bishop takes e7, knight takes e7 to block this pawn, so bishop e4, rook a7. These plans are obvious for the both opponents, even for me, even in real game without an engine, because it's typical. As for the fourth board, the last idea with before b5, the goal of that idea was fix the backward pawn in the c file, so right now c6 square is outpost for the knight, if I am right. After the knight e5, we analyzed it. Bishop went to f6 in this game, and b4 was played. I don't know, in any case, b4. So computer really recommended it, because this pawn wants to go ahead. Maybe it helps black improve their pawn structure, but after b4 it's harder to do it. But if I calculate right, it's possible. No, totally impossible. Why? In my mind, there is a discovered attack after the knight c5, rook c5, and this knight is hanging. What's the problem? Maybe in the end of the variation this pawn on d5 is hanging. Let's check till the end. So knight c5, for example, takes, queen b3, okay. This pawn is suffering in the all opportunities of continuations. Yep. For example, I try to protect it, so exchange here, and rook b5 with a pin. Another idea of white. So this trade-off on f4 was good, but not enough, because, for example, queen takes b7, and right now there are multiple problems in black's camp. This pawn is hanging, after that it will be a double attack. Here bishop is hanging, so everything gets ruined. That's the reason why c5 move is prohibited. Got it. After b4, it was queen e7, attacking this pawn, and b5. So c7 pawn is fixed right now. That means that it cannot go ahead, because after the c5 it will be en passant, of course. En passant is an interesting French word. As for foreign languages, words in chess, I don't know what can be except of en passant. Maybe desperado. Desperado sounds like Spanish word. So what else? Desperado, en passant. Intermezzo. Intermezzo, maybe it's a German. Zugzwang, German word. In Russian language, Mittelspiel, it's a German, but in English language, their own word, middle game, and game, but and Spiel in Russia, because Spiel in the Deutsch language is a game. So if you're interested, Mittelspiel, it's a Deutsch language, but using in Russian too. So Mittel, it's like medium, and Spiel, it's a game. So Mittelspiel, it's a average of the game, like the center of the game. And Endspiel, and the meaning of the word "and" is similar in every European language. So "and" means end, but "spiel" It's from Deutsch. What else? What else? Say me that. If I remember something during the stream, I will tell you. Because as for me, as for, people who like languages, it's interesting topic to discuss. In any case, after the b5, there was only one move for black, to keep the 0.0. It was a6, and a6 was in the game. After the a4, protection of this pawn, a file opened right now, and it gets black's position better. So attack goes away, creating a threat to the backward pawn, and rook a5 or queen b4, this pawn is hanging too. So it will be a counter threat. Right now knight is enough protector of the pawn, so this problem is more difficult. Rook b1, for example, and doubled rook on a file. So looks like everybody has enough opportunities to continue the game without problem. So we may tell that the moment between opening and middle game was equal, is equal in this particular case. As for the third board, Artemiev Vladislav plays white and Vallejo Pons Francisco plays black. Right now, white decided to take on the e4 by the bishop. Counter threat here, but the result the same. Takes here. Firstly, there is no difference between positions, 0.0 in any case. So bishop b7 is a potential idea, d5 is possible to getting rid of the Isolani, but right now, as you can see, white hasn't something to advantage. So both bishops are free. The fourth, the sixth of major pieces in the board has enough lines, to unleash. So that's not a problem to create a working line. So nobody has weaknesses, nobody has problems with the king, and after the first sequence of moves, we'll have got the equal middle game without features, bare draw. So my prediction that there is only one move for the black to keep the equality right here. It's a bishop g5. Bishop c6, knight a7. This bishop is potentially dangerous because this long diagonal is problematic. So, explainable that the best way to continue is trade off on the g5. Why not? Bishop takes g5 was in the game. So there are two options. Bishop takes c6 and knight takes g5 with a similar result in the end. Okay, today really is a drawish day from the whole tournament, maybe except of the first round. But really, everywhere equality. Equality is everywhere. Okay. After the bishop took on f5, white decided to take by the queen on f5 right here and rook b8. As for next plans, So I think this rook should stay on the f2, combining two useful works, firstly f-file, secondly backward pawn on b2. Maybe after that bishop will go to e3, open a line for the rook, and after that bishop will return to the c1, protecting this pawn. So looks like pawn b2 is an only weakness in white's camp, so it's logical after the rook after the rook goes somewhere, this bishop may return to the c1 from e3 or from d2 and continues to protect this backward pawn. So there is nothing dangerous for everyone. For example, rook f1, a4. I suggest to block this pawn, avoiding some troubles. Computer doesn't recommend it. He says that b3 square for the rook, it's so nasty in white's camp. So better to avoid this block right here. Just play. What about rook f2? It is possible. In this game, white plays rook e2. I think with the same ideas. Bishop e3, rook f1, f4 for example. Bishop e3, queen c8, trying to transform this position to the end game. Maybe, because attack to the backward pawns is more useful in the end game, because there is nothing else except of the strategic plans in the end game. In the opposite side, when we play in the middle game, it may be something connected with kingside attack or some kind of counter threats. So it's typical ideas when your opponent has a pawn structure weakness. One of your plans is exchange a queens to go to position where it will be more comfortable for you to capitalize your strategic advantage. Something is happening here. It was an exchange on b5 square. I told you that it's predictable thing, and right now the pawn c7 became weaker, but the point is b5 pawn became weaker too, because right now black major pieces has a chance to attack it from the different side, and white should protect it. What else? 0.0 in any case. 0.0 in the first two lines after rook a7 and rook b8. Maybe rook a7 looks more comfortable, because this 7th rank is free, to go to c7 or d7. But I think there is no difference here, because the next black's idea is bishop b7, and after the trade-offs, this rook will stay on b7 in any case. So 0.0. As for this position after rook e2, it's the only game, with different evaluation, but not so different, very close to previous meanings. So minus 0.2. Minus 0.2. Usually, for example, when I analyze my own games, if I see 0.0, I think like, oh, so nothing in this position is equal. But right now, when I analyze a Grandmaster's game, if I see something except of 0.0, I try to, think maybe it's a hint to opportunity of some potentially interesting attack somewhere. So of course we are looking for chances to giving more diversity comments, but right now it's a problem for everyone. The main idea of white is Ace keeps their pawn on a2, protecting b3 square from the rook. The rest of things is not so important, so after a4 it will be bishop, e3 or g4 or something like that. So that's not a big problem. Right now evaluation is minus 0.1, so yep, you understand what I mean. In any case, 2 hours of playing left. No, I don't know how many hours left, so I'm of course a predator, but not so good. I wanted to say that 2 hours of playing have passed, so that's the reason to take a 10 minutes break. Be here, we will continue. Hello there! Let's investigate what's happened in the time of our break. From the first sight, nothing, but who knows? We should check it right now. In the second board, in the game between Sugirov Sanan and Amin Tabatabai, 100%, nothing new. After the trade-off on f5, it was rook b8, and after that white's rook goes to e2. This rook protects this pawn, and right now bishop is free. It's very comfortable for him to go somewhere, because right now bishop is blocking the rook from the corner. So I think the next idea that will be in the board, it will be bishop e3, rook f1, and after that bishop will return to the c1, because protection of this pawn is his main goal. As for the third board, Artemy Vladislav plays with Vallejo pawns Francisco. As we discussed before, after the bishop c6, you know, there are two equal opportunities of black to save the rook from the corner. But the evaluation after rook a7 and rook b8 is similar, because bishop b7 is the next idea, and after the trade-off on b7, rook will stay here. So, rook a7 was played, and right now Artemy Vladislav is thinking for the last 4 plus 3, it's a 7, right? So, for the last 7 minutes, but he played a4. Interesting, interesting. He played a4, trying to open the a file for the rook. The most predictable answer is b takes a4, and if you take it by somebody, computer says bishop f6 is enough, because right now after this trade position became more opened, and of course pair of bishops loves opened positions. Of course, if you have more bishops than your opponent, you should change your pieces in the center. And in the opposite, if you have more knights than opponent, you should close everything. So right now, a4 move without this trade-off may be dangerous for white. And after b takes a4, computer recommends take here, you know, until you have this opportunity to exchange your knight, because dark bishop on this diagonal may be dangerous for you. As for other things, what about b4 here? Nothing interesting, and to be honest, for the black, it's more interesting for the black changing their pawns in the queen side and everywhere, because they have more bishops, and it's decisive circumstance. In the fourth board, before b5, a4 with a trade-off, and rook goes to a3, 0-0 in any case, queen c2. Computer says that's, as for him, that's a good time to make a free time repetition. Rook goes to a5, queen protected from the third horizontal, rook returns to the third line, so you understand what I mean. As for interfering by the rook, it is possible, but after rook a4, it's hard to protect this pawn. Why we didn't do it in the previous move? For example, right here, after rook a4, bishop returns to the a3 with defense. What's the difference? what will be in the end of this variation if I want to put my bishop in a free in any case. Knight takes d4, rook takes d4, and bishop takes e5 with a skewer. So interesting. This diagonal will be opened if we, in the end of this first sequence of moves. That's the reason why rook on c3 stays very unreliable. Okay, it was interesting calculations here, but we figure it out, so that's the best news for us. In this particular game, after queen c2, nobody wants to draw, so knight takes on d4, bishop takes on e5. And right now black has an extra pawn. And maybe they want to have a second. But computer says 0.0, so nothing. And his top engine move is queen b2. Maybe this backward pawn is not a treasure and there is no options to use it in the real fight, because en passant in every move is protected everything. I'm not sure of the computer ideas, but really so 0.0. Nothing except of 0.0. 3 lines of 0.0. You know that it means. So rook a5, for example, attacking this hanging pawn, h4, just ignoring the extra pawn of opponent. Maybe. After the queen takes e5, it was queen d2, attacking the isolated pawn. What will be after rook d8? I think e4. My prediction is e4. e4 is one of the options. So why not is a pin, so we'll take it in the next move, maybe. For example, rook a5 with a counter threat. Interesting idea of computer. Plays to the c4 because of the pin in the d file. So we'll take here by the rook. It will be interesting. Interesting means interesting. Okay, what else? The top engine move for black in this position with the evaluation of minus 0.1 is h6. Looped for the king because we have a lot of major pieces in the center of the board. So maybe the prophylaxis is, should be on time. Right now, for example, bishop d5 isn't working, because after this trade-off, black will take here, takes, and this move is prohibited because of rook a3, f3, and we have no line to protect the f2 pawn. So rook endgame may be lost. And right now, with this position, white should be careful. h6, for example, e3 is better. e3 is better, protecting the square in front of the isolani. So rook d8, for example, and rook dc4. I don't like that idea because it's feels like problem. Rook d7, I don't want. I don't know. And I don't want and I don't know everything. The both options. So, returns. Computer says that black hasn't good options to capitalize the extra pawn, but as for human, they are not get used to this type of playing. Usually, if your opponent has an extra pawn, your things are about to counterattack, because what else? Right now, problems. If we do nothing, our opponent will capitalize it. But the advices from the computer are different. Okay, Wahidov Shamsuddin is thinking. He has enough time right now, 46 minutes, and that's a great limit for this position. rook, queen d2, third column. I forget all the numbers in the English language. Thank you, good news for us. Queen d2, it was a 22nd move in the game. So maybe you realized that there are moments with person close to the camera, and if someone interferes the camera, so in the same moment, the director of the stream change the camera to continue the video. But the point is, in the real tournament hall, all cameras stand far from the participants to not distract them. So when somebody stay close to the camera in real life, this person doesn't know that he interferes something, because there are many meters between camera and participants. So organizers said that it's really important not to distract somebody during the game, especially in the time trouble position. So that's the reason why in every time trouble position, every cameraman's are going away from the tournament hall, so cameras continue to working, but there are no reserve human beings in the room. Nothing should distract from the calculations. That's a very important tournament in the chess world. Firstly, the strongest tournament in the Russia in 2025, as I said because the average rating of the participants is 2648 points, so that's the biggest number in this year. Secondly, 22nd Karpov International Chess Tournament is a part of Circuit 2025. Circuit 2025 is a long-term tournament, the whole year system with points, and the great tournaments from this year in Blitz, Rapid and Classic Chess are involved in the Circuit 2025. So if you win the great tournament or have a prize place, you will have points in the circuit list. In the end of the year, the winner of the circuit will go directly to the candidates tournament. As you know, candidate tournament has 8 participants, and the winner of the candidate tournaments will take part in World Champions match. So that's a chance to become a new world champion. During my story about the whole system, the third board was finished with a draw. Just right now, after the a4, Francisco Valleja pawns responded b takes a4 and offered a draw. As you can see, Vladislav Artemiev accepts this offer, and right now they take their things near the board and go away from the tournament hall. Right now, 2 games left. Yeah, 3 draws. Really, it's unpredictable for me, because I was sure that after the day off, when everybody has a lot of time to prepare, to rest, to do something else, everybody will play like a monsters, because, you know, the amount of energy was recovered, or how I can tell it right. And after that, it looks like enough time and energy and everything to show your best. But right now we have the opposite situation. So free game have passed with the draws. So without adventures, yep. Equal positions, equal draws. And right now only 2 games left. And it looks like something close to the draw too. Second. Board, I wanted to say, that's a game between Sanan Sugirov and Amin Tabatabai. And right now white has a strong blockade here, so bishop will return to the c1, I think. e4 should be ignored, because after a3 it will be b3, this pawn is controlling. So usually in this type of position the only one way to win is create a second weakness to your opponent, somewhere in the queen side, in the king side, sorry, for the black. But right now it looks like white controls everything here, so the evaluation is minus 0.1. Nothing. My prediction is a draw, because, you know, especially after bishop g5, because rook engine with this type of position, so drawish. Computer agrees with me, but to be honest, I'm not sure at anything. So who knows? But it looks like the exchange of bishops simplifies the position, so the draw is predictable. Draw is like a illness, is like a flu. Do you know flu? Someone snorks, and after the week all participants snork, so the draw is the same thing in the round. So one draw, the second draw, the third draw, and but maybe, so I'm not against the thing. Yep, the exchange was in the game, why not? Sanan Sugirov in the last round has a problem, so maybe right now it's better for him to make a draw with the tournament leader. And I think Amin Tabatabai agrees to draw too, because right now he has a leadership in the tournament. It's hard to keep the leadership, and right now it doesn't require some efforts to do it, because position is very reliable for everyone. So looks like in this game the draw is okay for everyone, for the both opponents. Of course I don't know the real situation, it's just my suggestions, but for me they are right. As for the fourth board, it will be the longest one. Right now black has an extra pawn, and during the real game it's hard to ignore that. Computer managed to ignore this factor, so maybe that's the reason why he shows us 0.0 after the e3 move. So e3, but who knows, queen d2 was a calm move, calm decision. d3, for example, staying here, h4, rook b1, so like black hasn't chances to use it somehow. So maybe this evaluation is not really clear for me, because, you know, in my woman FIDE master's level. If somebody has an extra pawn, it should be an explanation why the evaluation is 0.0. But right now, I don't see the specific compensation in this position. Of course, this pawn is a weakness. Of course, this bishop and major pieces are strong guys. But as for particular ways to take it back or something, I'm not sure. You know, the rook endgame in the end of this fourth sequence of moves is okay. But as for the next capture, we discussed it before. So takes, rook c7 is prohibited because of rook f3, and this problem is unsolved. So that's the reason why you should go away and continue to attack that. But maybe there are some chances to h5 or something like that. I don't really know why it works. No. No? Yes? h5, for example. Rook c7. What's the problem? The problem exists at all or not? Computer says 0.0. He is pretty sure of this, of his evaluation. Interesting. As for this rook endgame, it was king f3, a4, and c4. Blocked all the center and the queen side. a3 cannot help with something after the b3, so the idea of c4 is avoiding variations with sacrifice maybe, or something like that, because pawn on c4 is a problem because of the idea a3. But after the c4, everything is so blocked, so closed, that I'm sure that will be a draw, and this result is comfortable for the both opponents, as I said before. Okay, so there is only game that is interesting for us right now. E3 or not E3? What's the question? Really, I do not understand what the purpose on E3 that computer recommended very, determined. Computer is determined of these recommendations. What's about other opportunities? Maybe I want to play what I want to play. h3 to create a luft for my king, in case of emergency. A rook b3, so my pawn is hanging, and in the end of this trade-off, it will be a problem. This exchange is prohibited because of rook a3 idea. So where is the difference? I understand everything. This pawn is hanging, this battery is dangerous for this pawn, so why not? e3 as a pawn chain, avoiding all these counter threats. And right now this idea with bishop takes d5 becomes possible, because opponent hasn't chances to take something back. For example, h5, bishop takes d5. Yep. So that's the reason why right now pawn is unprotected. After rook d8, it will be e4. We discussed it. e4 isn't working because of some strange counter threats as engine sure. As for me, now he changed his mind. Now a4 is working. For example, here. But we have a good bishop, to protect everything. Why not? Right now pawn is guarded. These ideas with using a pin here keeps, so our rook can go to the d1 and create a triple battery Alohin's gun here. So everything is under control. So, e3. Or not e3. After the c4. Right now I'm into by thinking, but if I did not a mistake. I saw him, how he goes away from the board. No, it was f6. f6. Like black plays the checkers, to be honest, you know. Every pawn stays in the dark squares. Interesting, interesting. e3 was played. Yep. 0.0. It's like a spell or a part of a telephone number. You know, 0.0.3. Call the emergency or something like that. I think if we count all my words that I pronounced during the whole stream, the 0.0 will be the most popular, finally, in my speeches. Rook d8. It's a predictable answer of the whole thing, but I want to ask you about the rook d1, if I just want to take it back. Rook b3, for example. Bishop should return. This is prohibited idea for us, right? Takes, 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 takes. Rook b5. This idea in English language called X-ray. You know, X-ray, like for example, if you broke the bone in your arm or in your leg, you would go to the hospital to make an X-ray. X-ray is a special light that go through your skin and make a photo of your bones inside your arm and leg. Of course, I hope that these cases will never happen in your life because it's painful, but this story was impossible to understand the meaning of X-ray idea. So X-ray, one rook protect the queen and queen protect the rook through the white's queen. Interesting, interesting. So there are no easy ways to return this pawn to take it back. But computer says, if you don't hurry up and just make a luft, and after that you just going away from the first rank, for example, and make some maneuvers here, all of your position is under control because your rook is very strong in the center. Opponent's pawn cannot move. Their rook on b4, not so good, maybe. This pawn on b5 may be protected by the bishop from f1 or by other pieces. So there is nothing dangerous for the white. After the f6, white responds h4. It was the top engine move, as engine says, but really 0.0 in any line, but maybe sometimes it's minus 0.2 after the king g4, but after h4, 0.0 totally. That's a threat of creating a doubled pawns here. After the trade-off, our pawn structures will be healthy for the all opponents, so everything is okay. As for the ignoring of this idea, for example, king f7, it will be trade-off here, and this pawn is aesthetic, but king on g4 is enough, you know, rook f2, controlling the open file with the ideas of rook f7, maybe not right now because of the hanging pawn, but potentially in future. So there are nothing interesting in black's position. Okay, and right here, Nestor Farseni is thinking for 4 minutes so far. He has 20 minutes in his clock right now, and he will do something. Oh, that was predictable. Everyone should do something during playing chess. Otherwise, the time would running out, and that's all. So my philosophy sentences about the life sometimes is strange, But you will get used to. It's just my style of a commentator of chess tournaments. So don't react, please. G4, trade-off here, and C6. So what else? D5? I'm not sure. I want to go ahead. And go ahead. Or stay here. It feels like reliable situation for the white. So this rook endgame, doesn't require something special with calculations or strategic maneuvers. But who knows? Who knows? After the rook d8, it's hard position to make a choice. For me, of course, it's obvious because I have a engine. I have a teens from engine every second of my streaming. But as for participants in the real tournament situation, e4. Yep, it was e4. I wanted to do it all the time, really. But as computer says, firstly, engine said that it's not so good because of ideas with rook a5 and all this stuff. But after that, computer found the continuation connected with the bishop f1. And this back rank bishop, as usual, is a very strong piece for the white because he interfere nobody. He just stay and protect this pawn. And who knows, maybe after king g7 that move will be possible. Yep, it's possible. Computer doesn't recommend it because of rook da8. And this double rook can be a problem, or who knows, maybe they will not be a problem. Takes. Check. And why the number of pawns is imbalanced one more time. I tried to find the variations, to equal number of pawns, but no, computer says, Dasha, stop doing that. Because even in positions with imbalanced number of pawns, everything is okay. Okay, in the second board, Amin Tabatabai played c6, and right now Sinan Sugirov is thinking. c6 for the 28th moves in the position, so if you can count this simple math, there are 12 moves before the second time control, but my prediction is draw agreement before this moment. Just after 2 or 3 moves, somebody of the opponents in this board will offer a draw, and his opponent will accept it, because what else can be here? On the other hand, there are some blunders in these tournaments, in particular, rook endgame. So maybe that's not so bad, to check whether your opponent is ready to continue the fight. Why not? So, e4 was played right here, and it's time for black to solve these problems somehow. So, they haven't got a force defender to solve these problems easily, because this rook cannot goes to the d file. So that's the reason why they need to create a counter threat. As for rook a5 and rook b3, the perfect decision for white is bishop f1, as I said before, because right now this pawn is protected and the rest of the pieces stays perfect. So right now, as you can see, black's pieces have no chances to go somewhere. This rook should stay on the d-file. This bishop should protect. This queen have not good continuations of the maneuvers, because he should protect the pawn too. This rook should attack this pawn, and rook and bishop c4, it's potentially a threat. So I think this pawn is a question of time. That means that earlier or later white will take this pawn in the center, and that will be a equal number of pawns finally. Or not. We'll see how game unfolds. So right now Sanan Sugirov is thinking, Tabatabai is sitting relaxed in his board, so maybe it was just a final check before the agreement, or not. They are grandmasters. That's very hard to predict their behavior, because sometimes it depends on the mood, the tournament situation, the evaluation. Yep, the evaluation of chances and all these things. So right now they are thinking. As for this position, computer says that rook d a8 gives black the minus 0.3. No, minus 0.2 after this taking, and rook a1. Okay, pin is a dangerous thing. Right now I realized the chessboards behind the players. You can see that too. So these boards, what for? It's screens for analyzing games, so online boards are translated here. If the answer is yes, that's a very comfortable thing, because when you walking, you have a opportunity to analyze your game, during the passed by the boards, because sometimes the face of your opponent may disturb you. But if everywhere these electronic screens stand, you may, going and calculating in the same time further from the table. So something has happened. After the e4, I thought that black responds somehow. It was rook d a8 and e-pawn takes d5. Yep. The idea was rook a1. I really love that they have found the top engine moves. So sometimes the sequence of moves it's really unclear for me, and I just realized the first line of the engine and try to explain it somehow for me, for you. But in the game, they really found these moves. First line moves, and make it in the game. So rook a1. Right time is a threat because queen in this particular moment is overloaded. That means that he protects this rook and this rook in the same time. So there are some kinds of solving these problems. Rook d1 with protecting everything in the d file, or rook c4. But rook d1 is more human decision. Let's continue. For example, takes, and attacking an a4 square, d6. Oh, d6 is interesting opportunity of discovered attack. And right now that's prohibited because of d7 and the new queen. Interesting. To be honest, in some kind of variations, d6 can be a problem for the black. After this rook go away from the last rank. So, what about here? So rook a2 is not a threat, right? No, computer says no, because f2 pawn is not a problem. Okay, rook a1, rook c4 was in the game, so it's an opportunity of counter threat. Not right now because the rook is pinned, but potentially maybe in some future variations. So the only move who goes to the minus 0.3 is rook c1, rook c1. Taken by the queen, of course, is a very big blunder because of rook a1 with a pin, so you should take by the rook, and rook a1 in any case. So h3, creating a luft. Trade-off here. Bishop takes on d5. Takes. And it looks like a draw because there is a check here. Check from the d8, check from the d4. Hard to escape. What will be after f6? This check is prohibited, but computer says queen d6 is enough. Maybe. Really, their depth is 34. It's a great number, but it's not enough to calculate. Usually this type of endgames, it's very hard to play psychologically, because you should every time find the only move to keep your position equal, but if you make a mistake you will lose in this same time. Maybe something else for the white in the initial position, right here. Something else except of this trade-off and the losing of this pawn. I'm not sure. Maybe we will see the queen endgame in the end of the variation, because it's the sequence of forced moves or something like that. As for the second board, white plays h5 with the idea of g4, I think. Maybe. I hope Suger will not lose the second game in the equal rook endgame, because it may be very stressful. The fifth round was with a familiar situation with rook endgame, and maybe, I think so, because of tiredness, it was the emergency. So right now with the next rook endgame, when the game continues, so it may feel like I don't want to play that. Just my guess, I'm not sure. Maybe in the opposite he is enjoying of this endgame, but I'm not sure, because he has less amount of time, 6 minutes against of 47 minutes of Amin Tabatabai. So I think it's feel dangerous. And with a great desire of finish this game with a draw. Just, subjectively opinion. G4, yep. It was G4, and after some pawn breaks, for example G6, so computer isn't sure about this trade-off on G6. He answered maybe better to start from Rook H2. But in my mind, this created of isolated pawn, it doesn't make our position, more simple. So, who knows? Maybe after the G6, this trade-off is easier, and Rook H2, for example. And King G5 hasn't make a sense because of the check and returns. So, the next trade-off, okay. Rook just stays on H2. Looks like enough. King G3, King F3, King G3, King F3. D5 idea. Maybe that's not so simple. It may be hard to continue to play, when in your head everything finished with a draw. Because, of course, every grandmaster knows that this endgame is totally drawish, and if you relaxed, it would be hard to concentrate the new attempt to calculate variations. I don't know. But for me, it's working like that. It's very dangerous during the game to feel the, this calm mood, because when your opponent would create a new portion of problems for you, it's so hard to force yourself calculating the next variations. Hard to imagine. So G4, in any case, the evaluation here is, I don't know, I don't want to delete something. No. Forget this idea, please. So, what I wanted to say. When I see the question in my screen, like, do you want to delete these 13 moves? No, please. It's from the meme, like, I touch something and everything disappears. Yep, just my situation. Just looking for myself in the screen of TV, As for position, right now, after Rook D1, by the way, we discussed this variation or not? What we discussed? In what variation we analyzed the queen endgame? After H2, after H4, for example, H4, trade-off, and all this stuff with extra pawn in black's favor, but attempts of make a perpetual check from these squares, right? So maybe really Rook D1 is easier. Computer says no, but nobody asked him. Trade-off, for example, no, it wasn't in the game until this moment. So he said that bishop c8 is so hard idea, but for what? For example, h3, and what will be next? Bishop d7, queen d3, for example. Check. This check, this pawn is not so healthy. So let's be careful about that. h4 was in Rook d1, bishop c8. h4 was played, and right now this particular opportunities of black with exchange on d8, a d1 square, and bishop d7. What do you think about bishop f1, protecting everything? Why not? Computer answered that potentially black had the chances with king f8, e7 and d6. But it's a question of, further future. Right now it will be a checks. This king is not so farther from the center than this king. So if everything will be changed, this king is ready. So I think the evaluation is minus 0.3. That means that black had some chances, but not so clear chances. So everything is equal. What move was on the board? Bishop d7. It's a top engine move, but right here, yep, the evaluation is between minus 0.2 and minus 0.3. As for that position after g4, 0.0. And I think it's a comfortable, convenient time to take a new break. So 10 minutes and as usual, and after that we will continue our analysis. So, news from the time of our break. Let's check the boards, to analyze it. As for the second board and the game between Sanan Sugirov and Amin Tabatabai, what's happened here? After the g4, Amin Tabatabai responded king e6 and white played rook h2. This idea is not the idea because of hanging pawn, but potentially why not? If one of rooks decide to go away somehow, f file, g file, something else, it will be h6 in this particular moment. Rook a8, for example. h6, h6. Every trade-off helps white to goes closer to the draw. Yep. So after rook h2, what it was in the game, d5. Something has happened. But what will be after the exchange? And rook c5. Of course, this pawn is hanging, so maybe it's more logical to take it firstly, and after that take here. But are you sure that the position of black becomes better? C takes d5, yep, it was in the game. So c takes d5 is the only move for the black. This variation is predictable. And right now it's time to choose. Computer says everything leads us to the 0.0. h6 was in the game. I really don't understand what the idea, but we'll investigate it right now. So, for example, check. Take by the pawn. Everything is hanging h7 in the threat, so you should take it here. And rook takes c5, and rook takes b2, and check. This pawn is hanging, so you should protect it. So go here and exchange, and here, and rook a2, and rook h6, and it must be a draw, finally. Yep. So black hasn't so much options after the h6. The only one that we analyzed just now, and the second one takes here, takes, and takes on b2 without this exchange on e4. So takes with a check. Exchange here, and the rook takes f6. Rook takes a2. g5, king f2, avoiding this rook behind the passed pawn. It's important. Check, return, again and again. a3, g6. a2, for example, it's a losing move, because after the g7, interesting fact, this queen can promote with a check, but after that, after the king g2, white is winning the game. So, for example, queen a8, rook f8, with interfering and preparation of the promote, so this idea isn't working. What else? Checks from a2 and b2 isn't working too, but our queen wants to promote with a check. So maybe this is the variations that Sanan Sugirov calculate for so much time. Interesting. Right now, white has 7 minutes in the clock, black has 30 minutes in the clock. Variation is long but forced, so I think everything is possible for top-level grandmasters. As for the fourth board, it was it was an exchange on the a1 square, and after that I had a question. Why this pawn isn't hanging? Really, it was interesting for me. Because of d6. Because of d6, and what's next? d7 is a threat, maybe. Takes, and this pawn is extra pawn, but if you protect it, it will be a perpetual check by these lines. So that's the reason why this queen returned to the e5, bishop f1 protecting the pawn, and h5. The whole position is black's favor, because usually when we play an endgame with same color bishops, it's weaknesses. When your pawns stay in the squares same color than the bishops, and this pawn is fixed, so you can never move it ahead. And right now d5 and b5 is the weaknesses, but the engine says that black hasn't options to use it. Check and king e8. So returning. Maybe in some variations it will be queen h6. I don't know why. Queen should return, because the threat of the capture on d5 is a strong thing. So, yep. Bishop f5. Computer calculates variations in the depth of 27. That means 13.5 moves ahead, and he shows as minus 0.2. So it's a nothing special, but not 0.0. So these weaknesses keep on the board, are kept in the board, are kept in the boards. Irregular verbs, as I said before, yep. Keep, kept, right? So these pawns are kept in the board. Okay. What can be next? For example, just king g1, king h2, king g1, king h2. Bishop a4. Okay, try to protect it the simple way. King d7, king d6. Just continue my plan. Checkmate, checkmate, emergency. We have a checkmate, so be careful, please. This bishop on e4, it's a dangerous animal. Not bishop in English language is not an animals. In Russian language, bishop and animal and elephant is the same word, so I get used to this joke, but no, it's a language joke. In English language is some kind of insultion. I hope nobody heard that or forget in the same moment, because yep, sometimes this joke should be checked one more time before speaking it out loud, you know. So bishop e4 is a threat. Computer recommends to white played bishop f3, avoiding these ideas with checkmate and all this stuff, because it really may be problematic. And bishop d7, going away. As for bishop f1, what will be after bishop here? As I remember, bishop c4 isn't working because opponent has these ideas, or maybe not in this particular case. Yeah, right now f3 with the idea of a double attack. Potentially. Maybe something else after the bishop e4 pin. So this move is prohibited because of f3, but after f6, how we can solve all our problems? Maybe here, d6 computer recommends. This pawn is protector of the b6, and this move is prohibited. I like this line. Maybe. So, bishop f1, it's escaping from the dangerous e file, and after bishop e4 it will be queen e3. d6 is the threat, so if you do something, d6, this idea is interesting. So that means that right now bishop e4 isn't working. You should go away from the e file, and king d7 seems logical. What do you think about bishop h3? Computer says that it's blunder, hard blunder, because queen endgame is hard to defend. King is near to these weaknesses, and it's not a problem to go closer for them and take everything. Scary life. So we should keep the bishops in this particular case, and after king d7 plays something like bishop g2. So perfect circle of life from the, Hakuna Matata, that's a wonderful world. So no, yep, was I right? Or I wasn't right? No, it wasn't a circle of life. It was a, this checkbox, like yes. So this bishop stands on free only in some variations, not in the real life. So no, it's just half of a circle of life. It doesn't count. After the bishop f1, it was bishop g4. What the idea of bishop g4? What do you think about queen e2? I want to check it because I calculated. I've handled it. So after the trade-off, our pawn on b5 become, unprotected. So let's check it. For example, queen e2. That's prohibited. But white has more interesting options. One of them is queen d4 or queen c3. Queen d4 to protect this pawn, queen c3 with a counter threat. So let's check what will be after. Yeah, it was bishop g4, and Vahid Shamsidin responded with king d7 in the same moment. But I have a question. About queen e2 with all this stuff. Okay, this is a counter threat. I agree with that. So this pawn isn't hanging, and king d7. After king d7, it will be a check, right? Yeah, it will be a check and d6. And in the end of this variation, white is win the game. White do win the game, not is. As for stop. My brain works worse than I want to. So let's figure it out finally. Here, for example, takes. Bishop f3, I don't know with the checkmate threat in 1, but right now this is a perpetual check. Check. No, that's not a perpetual check. Be careful. Queen c7. From this. Double attack from this side. So you should stay in these places and very carefully. And the perpetual check in the end of the variation got it. So that's the reason why that idea with queen c3 is dangerous. So king d7. With protection of everything. What about queen c something in this variation too? I want to go here, I want to go ahead. So queen a2. Keeps the idea of d6, right? This discovered attack in the, how it's called, in the fingers of the, no, in the I forget. Yep, that was a good expression about the these places in the finger, like the idea, but maybe it's not the right way, you know, to translate phrases from one language to another, because every language has his own phrases to express everything. Let's be... no, queen a2. Finally, it was queen c2. So, you know, the problem of electronic board. If you take your piece and decide to go somewhere, but you do not throw out your finger from the piece. So electronic board thought that this move was made in the board, and if you return your piece away and do another decision, that's you know, illusion. So queen c2 with the threat of the check, I think. So for example, queen d4 check, king d8 check, king e7. This check. Do we need this check? Maybe. And I want to see. No, queen f7 is prohibited because of this capture. What I want to see? I want to see queen a2 with the idea of discard attack. Yep. In the second board, in the game... Oh. What's happened? h6. We were here. Takes with a check. Takes here. Rook takes b2. Exchange. g5. Pawn is pinned. Takes here. And rook c6. Oh my god. The evaluation is 0-0. You know, just to make you calm. Because this position looks strange. One move ago it was an equal number of pawns, but right now, after rook c5 it will be the equal number of pawns. Let's check the only one move that protect this pawn. So rook c2, for example, rook a6. If you return, me return, so maybe rook c4, g6. Yep, trying to go ahead. What's next? I don't know what's plan will be good for the black right now. It seems a draw finally, because you know this rook hasn't got comfortable moves. Okay, rook b4. Computer recommends us play king g4. Dangerous. g7 is enough. Check. And what else? And right now it's time to go ahead. Our opponent has 2 extra pawns, but who cares if they decided to make a draw. After the a3, it was a draw. So why? Takes and, for example, king d6. Rook a5. Yeah, this particular case is clear for me. Thank you very much. So this game was finished with a draw. Okay. So right now 4 draws have passed, and right now only 1 game left. Check from a3. Nestor Farseni plays with Vahidem Shamsiddin. Right now the evaluation is -0.1. because of these long temporary weaknesses in the light squares. But right now white has enough opportunities to keep this position equal, you know, without problems. Without problems or with problems, we don't know, because it's a subjective thing, but computer is sure that everything is okay for white. After the king d7, it will be queen a2 with the idea of counter threat. So it was queen c2, queen d4, check, return, check, return, check, return, and queen... No. The last 2 moves was in my fantasy. Yep, it wasn't in the real game. So queen a3 is a One more attempt. One more attempt. I can do everything. I can do everything. Even pronounce the English numbers. So, 41st move. That means that opponents have the second time control right now. This control is 50 more minutes, as you know, so they have enough time to calculate everything if they want to do that. Check from A3. Right now, you see the 6 and 22 minutes in the clock, but don't believe that numbers. It's a special type of clock when you can see your extra time only after the first period will finished. So right now white has a 56 minutes and black has a 72 minutes. Yeah, maybe that's the reason why it's a good moment to go for a walk near the board. You know, time to relax. Because our tournament right now is in his second part, so everyone is tired. But the really important question, how much? How much? So, physical preparation is very important for every participant, as you can expect. You would expect that the most important games is the eights and especially nines. So right now, check from this side. After the queen c5, it will be queen b2, because right now white isn't ready to exchange, because this king is close to the weaknesses, to these pawns in the light squares. So check. You know, when you work in the media sphere, usually the word check, association, whatever, with, you know, the word from the director like sound check, camera check, light check. And it's interesting how different meanings, how different sounds this word accordingly. No, not accordingly. That was a special verb, you know, to the according, right? According on the sphere that you are working. So, depending. This word sounds very differently, depending on the, depending on the sphere that you're working. For example, if you're, I don't know, gaffer who create a light picture when you make a movie, so this word light check and sound check and camera check, so we should do that. But in chess, you know, check, it's part of life, something very clear and splendid. Splendid? I know that word. How interesting. In any case, it was a check. This second game was finished like 10 minutes ago, but clock doesn't stop. Why? The result in Lichess didn't fix. And after that, I have questions like, why you stopped your game before the result should be fixed in the same moment that game was finished. It's a rule. So, in any case, after the king d7, this maneuver is prohibited because of queen f2. It's not so good because this pawn is protected. and that's not nice to play. But after some ideas with king d7, it will be queen a2 with attacking and protecting and threatening. As for the king e8, it can be a check from the a8. Oh, they made a result in the same moment that I told you. I really hope that nobody of, organizers team didn't hear me right now, because it can be uncomfortable sometimes. Okay, queen c5 was in the game, and right now it looks like the most logical move right here is queen b2. Yep, it was in the game. It was easy because you should protect this pawn, you should go away from the exchange because this king is closer, and you should have an opportunity to make a check from this side or this side. The evaluation is 0.0, 0.0 right now, totally. Oh no, minus 0.1 again, so no, not so easy. But right now this move is a threat, because every queen in the endgame wants to stand in the center of the board, and in previous moves this diagonal was in the black's hand, in the black's queen hand I mean, and right now after the queen b2 this diagonal is for them. This move is really dangerous, so there are only two moves that looks like logical continuation, is queen d6 and f6. After the f6, computer recommends to play queen d2. Only one question, what will be after queen takes b5? Check. Unclear. Why would I should sacrifice the pawn? It's my pawn, so not mine technically, but if I play white, I would think so, that it's my pawn, and it's, what's a pity if we lose it. So maybe something else after the f6. Bishop e4, it's more clear, so we are threatening this pawn. King f7, okay, maybe, no, these moves are prohibited, of course, because of hanging f2. d6, what for? Where the result? I really don't know his, logic. I mean, the engine. After c takes d6, he says, okay, ladna, ladna. Ladna, it means well in Russian language. Sometimes I forget the language that I'm speaking. So, after c takes d6, computer recommends to white plays king g1 or king g2 just for fun, maybe. It was our pawn, so no. Our pawn should be stands alive, in the board. So, okay. Bishop d7. What will be after the check on the e5? I have only one question. So, bishop e6, it's a strange, because we just return to the e file and this pawn in the board. So, queen e5. From this side, it will be, of course, perpetual check. So, king d8 is the only logical idea. Queen f6. Queen what? Queen h8. The only response. d6. Oh, the threat, maybe. Queen d6. Bishop c6. Queen e7. And just staying here. King g1, king h2, because opponent's pieces cannot unpin. Unpin. It's interesting variation. But that's the only one. Not that's the only one. That's variation who lead us to the clear draw. Because in the end of the scheme, black hasn't got some improving on positions. So it's enough for white, going by the triangle, or I don't know, exchanging here and taking here. So every variation leads to the 0.0. So it's comfortable if it will be in the game. But as for queen e5, it's look very natural for this situation. As for queen h8, it's look very natural in this situation. As for d6, I don't know, that's very natural. After the c takes d6, this move, check was in the game. This move is prohibited because of queen takes f2, and after some checks, this queen stand in the e file, and this pawn was extra thing. So, but d6, where was d6? d6, c takes d6. This pawn is hanging, but the check. King d7 is a bad thing because of a check from this side. So after, right here, for example, queen f7. Okay, queen f6 was in the game. Queen e7, queen h8, bishop e7, e8, sorry. It will be the same variation or not in the end of the story. So d6, for example, takes, and bishop c6 looks like the same, but the difference is c7 pawn. c7 pawn is blocked, d6 pawn isn't blocked. So maybe, no, we just take it if we want to. What about queen e8, returning, and d6 in any case? Getting rid of the weaknesses. If white gets rid of one weakness, the only one will be not so problematic, because it's easier to keep the one weakness than the two. So this check was in the game. Evaluation is 0.0 in any case. And right now, so what will be next? After queen e8, it will be d6 with a trade-off. After bishop e8, white may just ignore that, but d6 is fourth sequence of moves who lead us to the draw. Forcing. They're calculating and the time, but it looks like everything goes to the finish. Or not. Who knows? We'll know that after some minutes. So, what piece will decide to interfere after this check? My prediction is bishop. What it was. My prediction was wrong. Okay, it was queen. So it looks like free time repetition, because after... So let's continue this variation. For example, king c8, d6. Okay, takes here, takes here, takes here, check. Is it an extra pawn or not? Check, return, check. Looks like free time repetition in any case. So queen e8, queen f6. 100%. Yep. So is it a perpetual check? Look like yes, because they played quickly and somebody should count the number of moves and ask an arbiter, or just agreement is enough, because yep, they shaked the hands, and finally that was the quickest round in our tournament. Just 3 hours and 46 minutes for today. I want to say you that the situation in the tournament kept. So Amin Tabatabai has a first place with a gap from the second place in 1.5. Round Max at Juani, Vladimir Malakhov, Shan Sargsyan, Arseniy Nesterov, and Ike Martirosyan and Francisco Vallejo Pons are sharing the places from the second to the seventh. And Artemiev Vladislav, Sugirov Sanan, and Vahida Shamsidin are sharing the places from the 8th to the 10th. That's the situation after the 6th round of 22nd Karpov International Chess Tournament. So, see you tomorrow in the 7th round.